Hey everybody, welcome back to another video here on the channel. Today, we're doing some speculating, and since we're doing some speculating, that means that we need to take off our regular hats. And we need to put on our tinfoil hats. I bet you're wondering, what hat's under there? Like every time I see this hat, it looks different, and that's because this doesn't stay on forever. I usually have to make a new tinfoil hat. This one's bulky, man. Gosh, this one's so ugly. Hold on, let me see if I can squish it into shape just a little bit here. God damn, I made the mistake of cheaping out on the tinfoil I bought this time, so it's it's a little funky. That's okay. All right, so Pokemon Champions is coming out this year. We know that it's coming out this year only because they told us that the World Championships 2026 would be played on Pokemon Champions. And that is the only thing that we know that could point us towards a release date for Pokemon Champions. And you know what? I was thinking about it. And there's actually a lot of ways that the next couple of months to a year can go. And I don't know, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about it. So today, we're going to go over a couple of different timelines that I think are reasonable based on the information we have about champions and even, Gen 10 and stuff like that. So to start, let's start with the one that I think is the most likely. This is what I think is the most likely to happen. And it's not necessarily the one that I want the most. You see, I think in almost every version of history, Champions gets released this month in February. Pokemon Day is the end of the month. They can drop Champions at the end of the month on Pokemon Day if they want. And I think that works out for a lot of people. If they do it that way, then that gives us a little bit less than 2 months to, work on Champions before the Orlando Pokemon Regional, which is right after Regulation F ends, and then they can say that Orlando is the first regional that we use Champions on, and we use Champions the rest of the year, through Worlds, through however long we have Champions for. I think that is the timeline that I expect. I think that's the timeline, at least that far, I think is exactly what's going to happen, and I'd be very surprised if that isn't what happens, though we'll get into some different things in a little bit later here. So yeah, I think almost no matter what, Champions is coming out this month, and Orlando will be the first regional in which we use Champions. It lines up pretty well. Usually we have a game for 2 or 3 months before we start actually playing on it. It comes out November. We get our first regionals with it in January, February. I think that sounds pretty reasonable. Gives everybody time to, get settled in with the new stuff. And then that just so happens to line up with Regulation F ends. Makes too much sense. But what happens after that? What do we think's going to happen with the rest of the year? Because I think there's a couple of ways this can go. I think either Champions is a stopgap. It is meant to tide us over until Generation 10 comes. And that's kind of what I want. I don't want to be playing VGC on Champions forever. I've talked at length about this many, many times. I don't think that would be a good thing. But that is what some people want. Some people want them to stop making Pokemon games with competitive Pokemon in them. Oh, man, I look insane. I guess that's kind of the point, right? I guess I'll talk about what's very likely to happen first. I think this is more likely. I think this is what people expect, and I think this is what's probably going to happen. Champions will be where we play VGC for a long time. Maybe not forever. Maybe just until Gen 11. That's kind of really far out to guess. I think it depends on whether people like Champions, how Gen 10 is received. I think that we're likely to not, if Champions is meant to be a long-term solution or an almost permanent game for VGC, then I think that Generation 10 is likely to not have regular Pokemon battles. And like I said, some people want that. Some people really, really want that. I really, really don't want that. But, I can see the world where this happens, where this makes sense. This is why we get Champions. Champions comes out in February. We play it all the way through Worlds. And then Gen 10 comes out this year, and we just keep playing it. for, you know, however long, until at least Gen 11, and then they'll go Gen 11. Oh, Gen 11, you know, we're going to have regular Pokemon battles again. You know? I think that's, you know, that's pretty reasonable to expect. I don't think that's the future I want. That's definitely not the future that I want. Maybe it's the future you want. I don't know. You're free to disagree with me. I'm scared of champions, not just because I feel like they're going to fuck it up, but I do think that they're going to not do a very good job with it. I've come to not expect good things from the Pokemon Company when it comes to things like this. They're going to monetize the fuck out of champions. I feel like it's not going to be very accessible for people, but hopefully I'm wrong. I hope that I'm wrong about that. Here's where the tinfoil hat theory comes in, okay? This is what I think is going to happen. I think Champions comes out in February. You know, all the stuff that I already talked about comes out in February. We start playing it in March. We start playing it in April. Orlando's the first Champions Regional. We have Worlds on Pokemon Champions. But I don't think, and this is going to sound crazy, because it is a large anniversary year for the Pokemon Company. It is the, you know, it's the 30th anniversary of the day that Red and Blue came out, the very first Pokemon game. It is the 30th anniversary of Pokemon this year. I don't think Gen 10's coming out this year. Right, bombshell. You feel free to agree or disagree with me. Just let me explain. Okay, I don't think Gen 10 is coming out this year, because I think that Champions is meant just to tide us over until Gen 10 does come out. And I think Gen 10's coming out next year in like November. So we're going to play on Champions for basically 2 years, more like a year and like 8 months or something like that. No, it's going to be 2 years. If it comes out in February, we'll have Champions for 2 years. We'll be playing on it for a year and 10 months. I think that's what's going to happen. I think that Gen 10 is not coming out this year. Maybe we'll get some other kind of an anniversary game, right? I mean, it's almost impossible. Stuff has been leaked for a lot of this stuff, but, you know, it's very possible that everything has been leaked. They could announce some big game that comes out this year for the 30th anniversary of Pokemon that is not Gen 10, and I think it could make sense. Will they? I have no idea. The Pokemon Company has been doing weird things recently, and, you know, it is beyond me to guess exactly what's going to happen. But I think that Gen 10 doesn't come out this year. I think Gen 10 is going to come out next year, and the reason that we are getting Pokemon Champions is because we need a game to last us for the next couple of years before we get Gen 10. Again, basically 2 years, a little bit less than 2 years. And I think that's what Champions is. Maybe it'll continue to exist past that point, right? Maybe it'll still be like a thing that goes on. But like, if we have Gen 10 and Gen 10 has regular Pokemon battles, you got to think that they'd want to have us play our Pokemon game in Gen 10, you know, so people can see Gen 10. Like, that's marketing. VGC is just marketing for the Pokemon Company. They wouldn't run the tournaments themselves. They wouldn't support it if it wasn't making them money, if it wasn't doing something for them, right? You know, there's a reason that Nintendo doesn't... I mean, they do kind of hold their own Smash tournaments, but they don't hold their own Smash tournaments because they don't see any money in it. Most games don't hold their own tournaments. They're being held by third parties, and maybe they have to, like, get permission or whatever. Maybe they pay, like, licensing fees. But Pokemon Company is out here running their own tournaments for everything. Grassroots tournaments exist, but they basically don't mean anything because they don't tie... Pokemon made a whole system for Pokemon VGC, and yes, it's largely piggybacking off of like the TCG. I think that's a big reason why competitive Pokemon has like its own stuff and why the Pokemon Company runs it. But they wouldn't keep doing it if it wasn't making them money. I don't see a world where Gen 10 comes out and it has regular Pokemon battles, it has regular player versus player battles and all of that stuff, and we're not playing VGC on it. So either Gen 10 doesn't have regular Pokemon battles, or it doesn't have regular player versus player battles, or something funky's going on with Gen 10, or it's not coming out this year. And for me, you know, I think this is more likely, but maybe it's just because it's what I want. I think that Gen 10 is coming out next year. I don't think it's coming out this year. That sounds crazy. It's the 30th anniversary. Maybe they'll do something else for the anniversary. You know, we're getting Pokepart Kanto. That'll probably be a big part of the presentation. They're going to talk about all the stuff. They're going to say, it's open. Look at it. Look at it. It's so pretty. You should go. They're going to talk about the Ditto game, the Ditto Child game, Pokopia. They're going to talk about something that's coming out this year. But I don't think it's Gen 10. And, you know, I kind of want Gen 10 to come out. But would they really give us Champions if it was only meant to last like a year? Like exactly 1 year? A little bit less than 1 year, maybe? I kind of don't think so. That sounds like a lot of effort for just 1 year. I think it's supposed to last us until we actually get Gen 10. And yeah, I don't know. That's my theory. My theory is that Gen 10's not coming out this year. Pokemon Gen 10 is not coming out this year. It's coming out next year, and we're getting Champions because they need to give us something to tide us over until Gen 10 comes out. Maybe that's optimistic, but I don't care. It's my video. It's my tinfoil hat. Okay? All right. What else could happen? Well, there's a world where Champions comes out in, let's see, Worlds is in August. There's a world where Champions doesn't come out until like June or July. And Worlds is the first tournament that we play on Champions. And then, like, you know, whatever happens to Champions after that is either we play on, I think, wait, okay. Here's what I'll say. Unless the game got delayed because they didn't think it was good enough, which would be a good thing to me, I think. If they, like, delayed the game because they wanted to make it better, that's fine. If that is the reason that Champions comes out later, then, like, it's anybody's guess whether Gen 10's coming out this year or not. I guess we'll find out both things on the same day, probably. This theory will be proven right or wrong, kinda, like at least a lot of it in, you know, like 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, towards the end of February here. If the reason that it doesn't come out right before Worlds is because it got delayed, then it's anybody's guess what's going to happen. But if the reason it doesn't come out until right before Worlds is because that's what they were planning all along, then I think it makes it more likely that Champions is meant to be permanent. Or at least permanent for a while. And that, I think that would suck for me. I think I would hate that. But, you know, it is what it is. Yeah, I think in that scenario, they planned for it to come out June, July, so we get, like, whatever's coming after Reg F. A lot of people are kind of thinking we're going to get Regulation I again, and I don't really know what the reason for that is. Maybe they just want it. I don't know. I don't know if I want Regulation I again. I think if we got Regulation G again, I would go out of my way to bring Poliwhirl to another regional. I don't know if I would do it for Regulation I. I guess it didn't really get a fair shake in Reg I because I messed up and brought Water Absorb instead. But, you know, in a world where we play Regulation I from, like, you know, April until whatever the Worlds format starts, I think that makes sense. I think Champions could get delayed to the summer. Maybe not, well, either it gets delayed or that's when they plan for it to come out all along. Will they actually tell us which one of those things happened? Probably not. I feel pretty confident that it's meant to come out on Pokemon Day. That's how I feel about it. But I think if it comes out not on Pokemon Day, that increases the chances of Champions being a longer term thing. Because especially if Champions is coming out in like June, July, and we play Worlds on it, and Gen 10 comes out this year, Gen 10's not having regular Pokemon battles. Either that, or they just decided they didn't want to do it in Gen 10 anymore. Like, they just didn't want us to play VGC on Gen 10, and that would personally make absolutely no sense to me. For reasons I've already explained. I feel like I'm rambling. You know, the hat, it's bouncing all my thoughts around in my head. So yeah, I don't know. I'm so torn. Okay. What I want to happen, what I feel in my heart is going to happen, is that Champions comes out end of the month. We play it for, like, you know, a month and a half, 2 months. First regional is Orlando in April, which would be nice because then I'll be there and I can, you know, be among the first people to use champions at a regional. That'd be cool. That's my hometown. We play with it all the way until whenever Gen 10 comes out. It could be this year. It could be, next year. And then a couple months after Gen 10 releases, we switch to Gen 10. I think that makes more sense if Gen 10 comes out next year, but if it comes out this year, it could still happen, I guess. I mean, the shelf life of your game being a year is not, like, absolutely awful, especially if it's a mobile game. But if it's a mobile... Here's the rub. Here's the rub. They gotta monetize something in this game, right? The Pokemon Company, especially out of any company you could talk about, is a company that likes to make money. They like to monetize the ever-living fuck out of things. And if you don't believe that about the Pokemon Company, then, like, you need to, like, take your tinfoil hat off and, like, let the stuff in, like, because that is absolutely a thing that is true. It's not a theory. This app's got to be monetized somehow. And, like, Pokemon Go's monetization I don't think is that bad right now. It's definitely been bad. But do you remember the Pokemon Friends? Do you remember Pokemon Friends? Pokemon Friends is monetized in, like, the absolute worst way possible. And that is, like, the first mobile game that has come out that was made directly by the Pokemon Company, which I believe Champions is basically being made directly by the Pokemon Company. Maybe, I think, like, Ilka's working on it, maybe, so maybe it won't be so bad, but I'm worried that Champions is going to be monetized like Pokemon Friends, and we're all going to hate it, and we're going to have no choice because they know we're going to have no choice but to use that goddamn app, and people are going to pay money for it. I think the best case scenario for that is that they bundle it with Pokemon Home. They make Pokemon Home just a little bit more expensive. Go from, I think I pay like $3 every 3 months for it. $5 every 3 months for Pokemon Home, and then it includes Champions, and like you just get all the stuff. Like that would be fine. I'd be okay with that. It would still kind of suck, but I could swallow that pill. That would be okay with me. Where was I going with this? Yeah, those are the three timelines. Okay, either it comes out in February and Gen 10 comes out this year, which is the timeline that I think most people believe in, but I don't think is going to happen. It comes out in February, and then we are getting Champions because Gen 10 is not coming out until next year, which I think almost sounds likely. The only thing that makes it not sound likely is that this is the 30th generation of Pokemon. Why would they not want to release a new Pokemon gen this year? And maybe it's not out of want. Maybe it's out of necessity. Maybe Gen 10, because this is probably true, Gen 10 probably started its life on the Switch 1, and they're bringing it over to Switch 2, and because of all of the terrible, terrible things people have said about Scarlet and Violet, people have said about ZA, they said, okay, fine, we'll make the game good, and they're pushing it back a year, and that's what we're getting Champions. Yeah, I think that's the best possible future, to be honest. That sounds great. You're telling me Champions isn't permanent, and Gen 10 will be actually made for the console it's coming out on? That sounds great. Oh man, a Gen 10 that's not like a sloppy, buggy mess. I mean, this isn't. I don't think this is true. I think it's kind of only true since the Switch. Pokemon games, I don't know, they haven't been like decreasing in quality, I would say. But Scarlet and Violet is not the most quality game Pokemon has ever come out. Usually the second game to come out on a console for Pokemon is like crazy good. Like Sun and Moon is so cinematic, and like Black and White and Black 2 and White 2, super cinematic games. Crazy what they did on the hardware. Like, why wasn't Scarlet and Violet like that? It felt like they wanted it to be, but they didn't try hard enough. Why didn't they try hard enough? That's what I'm trying to understand. So like, since Scarlet and Violet came out, I feel like it's very hard to predict what the Pokemon Company is going to do with stuff, because it feels like they're getting more money grubby and less quality grubby, which is not good. So that's what makes this kind of difficult, which is why maybe I'm being too optimistic. Maybe they're going to give us champions. They're going to monetize the ever-living fuck out of it. And then we're going to play it forever, and we're going to pay, $10 a month for Pokemon Champions Plus, because if you don't pay $10 a month for Pokemon Champions Plus, it's a worthless app. And we're going to have to play a monthly subscription to play VGC, and I don't want that, man. If that happens, am I going to keep playing? Somebody else is going to have to pay for my subscription, man. I can't do that. I can't pay $10 a month to play VGC. That sounds awful. Who wants to do that? Nobody wants to do that. But I bet if the Pokemon Company thought that they could get us to do it, they would do it. And that's so scary to me. That's terrifying. Which is why I don't want to play on Champions forever, because it's a mobile app and they could at any time go, all right, now you have to buy the $80 Pokemon game and you have to pay a subscription for Champions. That's the rules now. And it's $80 to enter a regional. And it's impossible to find locals in your fucking city. That would be too much for me, man. I'm gonna have to pivot the channel real hard if that happens. Maybe it'd be for the best. I don't know. That's a lot to think about right now. I don't want to think about that. Maybe I'll talk about it with my therapist tomorrow. Yeah, so there you go, man. I feel like hopefully you understood some of that and some of it made sense. This is not going to be a very highly edited video. I have another one that I'm working on coming for you. Actually, maybe have a couple that I'm working on. I don't think I'm going to do abridged for Birmingham, just because I didn't watch the stream at all. And I'm not going to go back and watch all of the stream to do like a recap of it. I didn't know that regional was happening because I was working on the video for Toronto. And then I was like, oh shit, I got to get myself in gear because Birmingham's happening. It's going to be over before I get this video out. I probably will do EUIC. And I think I'm going to try to reach out to other content creators to see if they want to collab on it and do other voices with me. I think that sounds fun. Will it happen? I don't know. Will I actually reach out? I'm very bad at networking, guys. If you all want to network for me, tell me who I should get to be in the EUIC abridged video. I'll reach out to them. I have some friends that I can reach out to that it might be a little bit easier, but who knows? Yeah. If you're excited for any of that stuff that I mentioned, subscribe, please. Be an AndyLa fan today. If you like tinfoil hats, be an AndyLa fan today. That's it. I think that's it. I think this isn't as in-depth of a theory that I've done in a while. I've got a lot of stuff to talk about, but really, I just wanted to say that I kind of don't think Gen 10's coming out this year, and that's really the pinnacle of this video. I think that the reason we're getting champions is because Gen 10's coming out in 2027, and they wanted to give us something to tide us over. And if that is the case, then I think that it is the best possible future. And hopefully you do too. Leave your comments down below. Tell me what you think is going to happen. Which one of the scenarios that I point out do you think is the most likely? Which one? Or is it some other scenario that I didn't even talk about? Tell me what you think. Let me know down in the comments. My name's Andrew. I'll catch you guys next time. Once upon a time, man, I heard that I was struggling. Came from a gen where power creep wasn't coming in. Face long, stats tight, defense up, shack height. Sturdy on me, sash like, got that TM last night. Hit me with that good move, make the smile and act right. Bast boys, bout to hit that builder. I know that's right. Big Bast busting out these body presses, bout to buy a body bag and